I wasn't supposed to notice her that way. Not here. Not in my friend's living room, where the smell of fresh coffee and floor cleaner made it feel like Sunday mornings from my childhood. But then she looked up at me. Mid-stretch, hair tied loose, a thin line of sweat at her temple, and the whole space shifted. Mrs. Carter, my best friend's mom. Or, as her clients called her, Eva. I'd never said her first name out loud. Felt dangerous. I'd stopped by to drop off a borrowed book, figuring I'd be in and out before my friend got home. Instead, she opened the door barefoot, in black yoga pants and a faded tank top that clung just enough to make me forget why I'd come. "Sorry, I'm just finishing a class," she said, stepping aside. Her voice was calm, but her eyes scanned me like she wasn't expecting me to look quite this grown. The TV still played a yoga video in the background, muted now, and her mat lay rolled out on the hardwood. The air was warm, thick with the scent of sandalwood from a candle burning low on the coffee table. "You can wait if you want," she said, nodding toward the couch. "I've got 10 more minutes in me." I sat but didn't turn on the TV. Instead, I watched. Not in a creepy way, or at least I told myself that. Her movements were slow, precise, almost hypnotic. She bent forward, fingers brushing the floor, the curve of her back like something drawn instead of real. Then she glanced at me over her shoulder, a smirk flickering. "You're flexible too, huh?" I froze. She was teasing. Probably. But the way her voice lingered on the words made my chest tighten. "I guess," I said, trying to sound casual. My leg bounced involuntarily. She shifted into another pose, the muscles in her arms tightening slightly. "You played soccer, didn't you? You always moved like you knew your body." Always. She'd noticed me before. Something about that landed heavier than it should have. My friends never really saw me. Not the way I was now. But she had. When she stood, she grabbed a towel from the armchair and patted her neck. "Hand me that water bottle?" I reached out, and when she took it, her fingers brushed mine. Just for a second. But it was enough for me to feel how warm her skin was. The room felt smaller. The candle hissed faintly. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed, but neither of us looked toward the window. "You should try a session sometime," she said, unscrewing the cap. Her tone was light, but there was a small pause before she drank. "I think you'd surprise yourself." I swallowed. "You offering to teach me?" Her eyes stayed on mine a beat too long. Then she smiled. Not the kind she gave at school functions, not polite, but something quieter, more private. "That depends," she said, twisting the cap back on. "Do you follow instructions well?" My mouth went dry. I opened it to answer, but my friend's key turned in the front door. Her smile vanished, but her gaze didn't. She stepped back, tucking the towel under her arm, and in that split second, we both knew something had shifted, and that we weren't going to ignore it. When my friend walked in, the air in the room seemed to rearrange itself. Mrs. Carter, Eva, greeted him like nothing had happened, slipping back into her easy, motherly cadence. But I couldn't unsee the way her fingers had lingered on mine, or the way she'd looked at me before the door opened. I made an excuse to leave, but she stopped me. "Actually, could you help me with something in the garage before you go? It'll only take a minute." Her son barely noticed, already halfway down the hall, so I followed her. The garage was cooler, shadowed except for a strip of afternoon light spilling in through the side door. She gestured toward a stack of folded chairs. "These need to go back up on the wall hooks. I can't reach." It was such a small thing, but the way she stayed close as I lifted them made my pulse trip. I could feel her watching, not in a distant, absent way, but with a quiet focus that made the back of my neck warm. "You know," she said softly, "I keep forgetting you're not a kid anymore." I turned. She wasn't smiling. There was something else in her eyes, something I couldn't quite name. "That's good, right?" I asked. Her lips pressed together, like she was weighing the answer. "It's complicated," She looked away, fussing with a box on the workbench. Mark's dad and I split 2 years ago. I thought I'd gotten used to having the place to myself. And then you keep showing up. Taller. Different. Different. That word lodged in my chest. I wanted to tell her I noticed her too. The way her voice dipped when she was tired, the tiny scar on her forearm, the faint citrus scent she carried after class. Things no one else seemed to pay attention to. But my voice wouldn't come. Instead, I said, "I like being here." That made her pause. She turned slowly, leaning a little on the workbench. "You shouldn't." It wasn't scolding, it was warning. But her eyes didn't let go of mine. I took a step closer without meaning to. "Why not?" Her breath caught. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached past me, her arm brushing my side, to set the folded chairs in place. The touch was quick, but my skin felt electric under it. She let her hand rest on the chair hook for a second, then dropped it. "Do you want to stay for dinner?" The question was simple, but her tone wasn't. It was too soft, almost careful. I should have said no. My friend was just down the hall. This was already skirting something I didn't understand. But all I managed was, "Yeah, sure." She smiled faintly, like she'd won something, then walked past me toward the kitchen. And I stood there in the dim light, knowing I'd just stepped over a line neither of us planned to draw again. Dinner was quiet in a way that made every sound louder. The scrape of forks, the faint hum of the fridge, the soft creak of her chair when she shifted. Mark was in his room, gaming with his headset on, leaving just the two of us at the table. Eva kept asking me small questions about school, work, my soccer injury, but her eyes didn't match the casual tone. They lingered too long, dipped too quickly to my hands, my mouth, then back to her plate. Halfway through, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen, didn't answer, and turned it face down. "Not important?" I asked. "Not tonight." She pushed her plate aside, folding her hands. "I needed this." The words sat between us for a moment. I tried to focus on cutting my food, but my chest tightened. "You okay?" I asked. Her smile was small, tired. "It's been a long week. You ever have one of those days where someone just listening makes it easier?" I nodded slowly. She wasn't just talking about today. Before I could respond, she leaned her elbows on the table, chin resting on her hands. "You've changed, you know. You used to barely look me in the eye." I felt the heat rise in my neck. "And now you don't look away." She said it like it was a compliment and a warning at once. I laughed quietly, trying to break the weight in the air. "Maybe I'm just not as shy." She didn't look convinced. Then she reached across the table, fingertips grazing the back of my hand, just enough to feel the warmth of her skin before she pulled back like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. I leaned back, trying to steady my breathing, but I couldn't stop noticing everything. The way the dim kitchen light caught the fine lines near her eyes, the faint trace of lavender lotion when she moved, the way she kept her voice low as if someone might overhear. A sharp knock at the front door made us both flinch. We froze, then heard footsteps in the hallway. Mark's voice calling out, "I'll get it." Eva exhaled slowly, pushing her chair back. She didn't stand, though. She just watched me. "That's your out, you know?" she said softly, almost like she didn't want me to take it. I swallowed hard. "Do you want me to leave?" Her eyes stayed locked on mine. For a long beat, she didn't answer. Then, barely above a whisper, "Not yet." The front door closed somewhere in the house, voices fading. She stood finally, her hand brushing my shoulder as she passed. Deliberate this time. And in that moment, I couldn't tell if she was warning me or inviting me to take the next step. Later that night, after Mark left to meet friends, the house went quiet in a way that made every sound feel too close. I was helping Eva rinse dishes when the conversation drifted into something heavier without either of us steering it there. "You and Mark?" she began, setting a plate in the rack. "You've been friends a long time." I don't want anything to change that. I glanced at her. You think I'd let something ruin that? She didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed on the sink, fingers lingering under the warm water like she was stalling. I think people do things they don't mean to, and then they can't take them back. I dried my hands slowly, leaning against the counter. Is that what you think this is? Something we don't mean? Her jaw tightened. I think it could be. There was a pause, the kind that pressed against your ribs. I could hear the faint drip from the faucet, the hum of the fridge, her breath when she finally looked up at me. You notice things about me? She said, almost accusing. I swallowed. You're right. I do. Her voice softened, but it didn't lose its edge. No one else does. It was the most honest thing either of us had said. And it landed hard. For a second, neither of us moved. I caught the faint citrus scent of her lotion again, saw the small tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers gripped the edge of the counter like she needed something to hold on to. I stepped closer. Not close enough to touch. Not yet, but close enough that she had to tilt her head to keep looking at me. You could tell me to stop, I said quietly. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her breathing had shifted slower, heavier. Outside, a car drove past, headlights flashing briefly through the kitchen window before fading. Felt like the world was waiting. Then she said it low and steady. You make it hard to be careful. That should have been the line. The signal to pull back. But I didn't move. I wanted to tell her I'd been thinking about her for weeks, that every small thing she did stuck to me like static. But the words jammed in my throat. Instead, I let the silence fill the space between us. A silence that wasn't empty at all. Her eyes searched mine, not for an answer, but for permission. I don't know how long we stood there before she asked, barely above a whisper, what happens if we don't stop? Her question, what happens if we don't stop, was still hanging in the air when a sharp knock rattled the front door. We both jumped. She stepped back quickly, her hands going to her hair, twisting it into a messy knot like she needed something to do. I followed her into the hallway, the knot in my chest tightening. She opened the door just enough to speak to whoever was outside. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught the voice, low, male, familiar. When she closed the door, she didn't turn right away. That was Mark's dad, she said finally, her tone clipped. He wanted to drop something off. For Mark. I hesitated. You still see him? Sometimes. She moved past me back toward the kitchen. It's complicated. Something in her voice made me follow. Complicated how? She stopped, her back to me, then turned slowly. He thinks I've been seeing someone. The words hit like a door slamming in my head. And have you? Her eyes locked on mine. Does it matter if I have? I didn't answer right away, couldn't. The question was too close to the truth neither of us had admitted. Then she said it, voice barely above a whisper. He saw you leaving here last week. Asked if you were the one. I told him no. But I don't think he believed me. My mouth went dry. So he knows. He suspects. And if he tells Mark... She broke off, pressing her lips together. This could get messy fast. I should have felt the warning in that. Instead, all I could think about was the way her voice shook on the one. You could have told him the truth, I said. Her brow furrowed. What truth? That nothing's happened yet. Her eyes flickered, just enough for me to catch it. Yet, she repeated, like the word itself was dangerous. The silence stretched again, tighter this time. Finally, she stepped closer, her tone shifting. If we keep this up, it's not just your friendship with Mark that's at risk. I've been through a divorce. I know what it's like to have people look at you differently. Once that starts, it doesn't stop. I searched her face, trying to read whether she was warning me away or pulling me in. Then she added, quieter. And you're not making it easy to care about the consequences. Before I could respond, a door creaked down the hall, Mark's room. We both froze, listening. His footsteps moved toward the bathroom instead of the kitchen, but the tension didn't ease. She looked at me, something raw and unsettled in her gaze. "Go," she said softly, but her eyes didn't match her voice. I didn't leave right away. I stood in her kitchen, the sound of running water masking the weight in the air, until she turned the tap off and finally looked at me. "You should go," she repeated. But this time her voice wasn't firm. It was tired. "Is that what you want?" I asked. Her lips pressed together. "It's what's safer." "That's not what I asked." She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she exhaled and leaned back against the counter, like she'd been holding something in too long. "You make me feel." She stopped, shaking her head. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." The words came out sharper than I meant, but I didn't take them back. I'd been biting them down for too long. She studied me, the kind of look that saw through the front I kept up for everyone else. "You make me feel seen, and I haven't felt that in years." It hit harder than I expected. Not just because it was the truth I'd been chasing, but because it sounded like it cost her to admit it. "I don't want to be careful with you," I said quietly. Her jaw tightened. "And what about Mark? What about when this isn't just between us anymore?" I stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough to feel the faint warmth radiating off her. "We can keep pretending nothing's happening, but it won't make it untrue." She closed her eyes for a beat, and when she opened them again, the fight in them was tangled with something else. Longing, guilt, maybe both. "I thought I was protecting you," she said. "But maybe I was just protecting myself." I swallowed. "So stop." The silence after that was different, not hesitant but charged. Her breathing slowed, and mine matched it without meaning to. Then she moved. Just a small step, but it closed the space between us until there wasn't any. Her hand came up, hesitating at my jaw, her thumb brushing lightly along the edge of my cheek. "We can't undo this," she said, voice barely audible. "I don't want to." The kitchen felt smaller, the dim light wrapping around us like the moment had its own gravity. She didn't kiss me. Not yet. But her forehead rested against mine, the contact quiet and steady. "Then we don't stop," she whispered. The sound of the bathroom door opening down the hall snapped us apart, but neither of us stepped back more than an inch. Her eyes held mine, steady now. "Come by tomorrow. Early. Before Mark's up." And just like that, the decision was made, not in words, but in the way neither of us pretended anymore. She left the front door unlocked for me the next morning. The house was quiet, blinds still drawn, the early light slipping in thin strips across the floor. She was in the kitchen, hair still damp from a shower, coffee steaming in her hands. No yoga clothes today, just an oversized sweater that made her look softer, less guarded. "Morning," she said, and the way she said it felt like we'd already crossed into something new. I closed the door behind me. "No turning back now, huh?" Her smile was small but real. "I think we passed that point last night. We didn't rush. We didn't pretend we were the same two people from a week ago either. The space between us wasn't charged the way it had been. It was calmer, heavier with the fact that we'd made a choice and were standing in it." "Mark's not going to understand," I said finally. "I know." She set her coffee down, hands curling around the counter. "But I can't keep making my life decisions based on what's easy for everyone else. I've done that long enough." Hearing that, I realized how much she'd changed since that first day I walked in on her mid-stretch. Back then, she was holding her life together in neat, careful lines. Now she was letting one of them blur. "And you?" she asked. "You sure about this? Once we step forward, we don't get to pretend." I nodded. "I don't want to pretend." That was enough for her to close the distance. Her hands came to my face, steady and warm, and this time she didn't hesitate. The kiss was slow, not like the movies. No sudden music, no dramatic pause. Just the quiet, certain feeling of two people who'd been standing on the edge and finally stepped across. When we broke apart, her forehead rested against mine. We'll take it one day at a time. No rushing, no hiding. Just careful. It wasn't a grand declaration, but it felt truer than anything else we could have said. The rest of the morning was unremarkable in the best way. Coffee, quiet conversation. Her teasing me about not being able to hold a proper yoga pose. But underneath it, the shift was undeniable. She wasn't just my friend's mom anymore. And I wasn't just the kid she used to know. Looking back, I think the real danger wasn't the secrecy or the risk. It was how easily she made me feel like I'd been in the wrong place my whole life until I ended up in her kitchen. And maybe that's the thing about crossing lines. You can call it forbidden, you can call it reckless, but if it makes you more honest than you've ever been, maybe it's exactly where you were supposed to go.